You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're listening to Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors on The Sports Objective. Join Coach C, a USA Strength and Conditioning Hall of Famer, every Monday night as he and a variety of guests, including former players, former and current coaches, pastors, and others will discuss relevant issues in coaching today's athlete, with the goal of equipping the athlete and those coaching them with the physical, mental, and spiritual armor necessary to live their best life. Here's Coach Connors.
Welcome to Absolute Empowerment. Tonight we have the famous Pirate Kevin Monroe on the show with us. And very happy to have him. Very privileged to have him on the show. Definitely one of my favorites that I've ever coached, Kev. And also, as a freshman, had the maturity of a 25-year-old coming into a program. So I always enjoyed your maturity. So great to have you on the show, brother.
Listen, Coach C, every day when I'm working out, I think about you and the things that we went through, while I was there from 95 to 99. And honestly, all the things I did as an incoming freshman was just out of fear. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I wanted to make sure I got in good shape. And so I was scared to death every day.
Well, we might as well get it out of the way right now. We know that the reason that the seniors kicked 8 300s up to 10 for the skill guys was Kevin Monroe came in there the summer before his freshman season and made 8 300s with 30 seconds rest the first day he stepped on campus. And so the seniors lost their minds and said, we can't have this, and we got to kick it up because we cannot have a freshman making the conditioning test first time he steps on. But I'm not really sure what month that was, Kev, because we had to prepare for a while for that. But I probably have exaggerated that a little bit, but you indeed made those 300s, and it kind of shocked everybody.
I did. I had just gotten out of high school. Honestly, I wasn't enrolled in school yet. I don't even know if that was legal for me to be over there. But since I was in Greenville, I said I'm going to go over there. And so me and Troy Smith would come over and we'd work out with the players. And I'm not going to say that I loved it, but I wanted to play. And so I was going to do whatever it took. And I remember I had to leave the Tuesday before we were going to run the 10 300s with 30 seconds rest. I had to leave for the East-West All-Star game. And so I said, Coach, I'm not going to be able to come out there Tuesday afternoon and run with the guys. And you said, well, if you want to do it, come in the morning. And so you met me out there at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. And I was the first person to ever make the 10 300s 30 seconds rest. Now, obviously, I didn't have the heat that the rest of the guys had later that afternoon. But I was by myself, nobody cheering me on, just me and you and that whistle. And I was able to make it. So that was a huge accomplishment for me way back then.
Well, you set a new standard. That's kind of what it was all about back then. Guys were very competitive, and you made it even more competitive when you joined the team. I wanted to talk a little bit about when I first found out about you. I had been going to the local bank there on Red Banks. And your mom was working in there. She was a very friendly person and really took care of me every time I came in there. And we got to talking. She'd keep telling me, well, I know you're coaching over there. And, I got a son. He's pretty good. And I'd keep asking her about you. And, I really didn't, everybody wants to talk about their kids. So I really had no clue that you were going to be as good as you were. I mean, she was definitely right. You were a Division I prospect and highly recruited. And, what made you pick East Carolina?
Well, I tell you what, I had a visit by Coach Logan and Coach Pagano. They came and sat in my living room and, they offered me, on the spot early on before anyone else did. And, my dad just kind of said, listen, I don't care how many other offers you get. Just remember the loyalty that East Carolina showed you and how early they offered you. Before your senior year even started and all this stuff. And so I felt good about that. I had opportunities to go other places. NC State was high on my list. But, I just always remembered, the loyalty that Coach Logan showed me and the fact that both he and Coach Pagano came and sat in my living room, and they didn't have to do that. We could have done it over the phone to give me that offer. Now, Coach Pagano did leave before I got on campus. He left and went to Miami. But I was able to play under Coach Fleming and all that good stuff. But, yeah, it was just, I grew up in Greenville for the most part. Always loved the Pirates. Got to see the Peach Bowl game on television. My father went to East Carolina, so it was an easy choice. I was pretty much always going to go there. I just wanted to kind of see what everybody else was talking about.
Well, I had Coach Pagano on another podcast. If you haven't heard it, it's definitely worth listening to. I mean, it was just awesome, as he always has been. And, I coached with him at Carolina for a year before he went back into the NFL as well. But he's getting ready to build a big mansion up there in Boise, Idaho, I think. And he's trying to collect helmets. So he was actually looking for an ECU helmet.
Oh, wow.
And I got our friend John McMillan, who supported the Pirates for many, many years, to help Pags out. So that was pretty cool. But, just a great coach. And the thing about it is Coach Logan wasn't going to play around with you if you said you were undecided or, but if you wanted to be a Pirate, man, he was going to be as loyal to you as you would be to him. No question about that. And he was always very happy to see that people were going to sign. But he also wouldn't play around if you were kind of vacillating between schools. He wanted you to make a decision.
That's right. I also wanted to play baseball, and so he was one of the few coaches that said I could come on campus and play both sports, and so that was an easy sell.
Yeah, I think Steve always had a great appreciation for baseball as well, and of course both of his sons played collegiate ball, so definitely I understand his perspective there where you're concerned. So growing up in Greenville. Of course, a big part of this podcast is the faith component. And, I don't make any bones about that. It's a Christian podcast. I'd like to know a little bit more about your faith, the influence of your family, possibly the influence of your church, or what your situation was there in Greenville. And, who were those people who possibly mentored and influenced you growing up?
Yeah, so my father was in the Air Force when I was born, growing up, and so we moved around quite a few places as a young child. And when I was in the 10th grade, he retired and we moved to Greenville. And so I started at Rose High School as a 10th grader. And growing up, I come from a Christian family. We always went to church, but there was no pressure to get baptized or anything. And so I went, I listened, I thought I was a good person, but had never really taken that next step in terms of getting baptized, getting saved. And it wasn't honestly until my senior year of high school, I met a girl. Every good story starts with a girl, right? And I met a girl, my current wife, and she was just an awesome person, smart, ambitious. But she was a woman of Christ. And so, I was going to Sycamore Hill Baptist Church there in Greenville, but to be near her, I started going to her church every Sunday, Greenville Church of Christ. And so, I would just get more and more involved. I started to do a separate Bible study, with the man there. And so I was getting closer and closer to God. But I tell you what actually happened is I kept saying to myself, God, I'm not ready. I'm not living the life the way I should be. I'm not doing all the things the way I should be. I'm not sin free. And I want to wait until I can do this on my own before I invite you into my heart, which obviously is the wrong way to go about it, because none of us can do it on our own. And I kept waiting and got into college. And this one afternoon, I get a call from my girlfriend at the time, and she says, don't freak out, but I was in a car accident. Can you come down here and get me? And so she seemed fine. She was talking to me, no big deal. So I assumed it wasn't a big deal. I get down there, Coach Connors. It was on the corner. It was right kind of on the corner of Red Banks and maybe 10th Street or somewhere in that area, not far from Parker's Barbecue, down that way. And she was turning left onto Red Banks, I believe, and there was an 18-wheeler that ran a red light. So her light was green. She went to turn, and luckily he was so far behind the light that she had already crossed over and was making a left turn, and he hit her right on her back passenger side door and spun her around through the intersection. I mean, a millisecond sooner, it would have hit her right on her driver's side door, and she probably wouldn't be here today. And I got there and I just saw the car, saw her, and I was basically in tears. And it was like maybe a couple of days later, I said, nothing's promised. Tomorrow's not promised. I'm going to get baptized. And I did. And, I turned my life over to God, and it's been, it's been just an amazing experience ever since. Obviously we have our good days, our good months, our good years, and our bad ones, being Christ followers, but I never regret the decision. I'm so glad that I met her. I'm so glad that she pushed me forward to do that and inspired me, and all the folks at Greenville Church of Christ and at Sycamore Hill Baptist Church that were there, alongside of my journey. But that's pretty much what made me do it and what carried me to that decision.
Well, I'm so happy that God led me to East Carolina University in 1991. I had been up in Pennsylvania at Bucknell University. I'd been in Florida before that, coaching high school, and I really didn't know much about East Carolina at all. I had coached a postgraduate program in Tennessee, and we played the JV teams or freshman teams, whatever they were called back then. And we played Western Carolina. It was in Tennessee at TMI Academy. And because Western Carolina was purple and gold, I thought when East Carolina first contacted me that it was actually Western Carolina. And I hate to say that, but because so many people call East Carolina Eastern Carolina.
Right.
And I wasn't even sure what school I was at when I flew for the interview, but I soon found out that I was not at Western Carolina. So
that's awesome.
That was an interesting experience for me. But I was so happy that God led me to, of course, Bill Lewis first, but to stay with Steve. And Steve would always tell the team, of course, if you're neglecting your spiritual life, you're making a mistake. And we all knew what Steve was about. I told Steve, his compass always pointed true north, his moral compass. He was just, that was him. I mean, he really always tried to do things right. And, nobody's perfect, but at the same time, he was up there meditating in that office every morning. And, I just really had great respect for Steve through my whole career there, and his influence on the team and every athlete that came through there from a spiritual standpoint, I thought was very impactful, and of course would contribute to him eventually being the winningest coach in the history of ECU as well. So we're all very lucky to be there with Steve as our leader. And, I can't say enough about that. Do you remember through high school who your mentors were? Any other athletes that were influences on you, or anybody you can think of there?
Yeah, so my big brother was a big, athlete himself. He's 3.5 years older than me. And so all the way through coming up, I always wanted to be like him. He kind of had an early growth spurt. Looking back on it, it's kind of funny because he's about 5'8.5" now. But I always thought he was a giant back then. And he played football, basketball, and baseball. He was a really good athlete, as good an athlete as me. He just never got much bigger. And so, he didn't really play much through high school and obviously not in college, but I always looked up to him. My father grew up playing ball. He grew up in Fayetteville, and he would tell me stories about, his time at E. Smith and also Terry Sanford high schools. And he played running back and defensive back. And so, he taught me everything I knew about football, about baseball. I was just an athlete playing basketball. I wasn't much of a basketball player. It's kind of an athlete playing basketball, but I love to play it as well. Just growing up, my brother and my father were, my big time mentors, my coaches that kind of brought me through, and I started growing. My dad is about 5'8.5". My brother's about 5'8.5". My mom is 5'5", 5'4". And so nobody knows how I ended up being 6 foot. It just kind of shot past everybody. And it was just a blessing from God to be able to have that size, to be able to be a Division I athlete. I can remember when I started getting recruited by Coach Logan in East Carolina, he always had the players kind of, pour into the recruits, especially if they were local. And so, guys like Mofo and Mark C and EJ, and Allen and all these guys would come to our high school basketball games. They come to our high school football games. And so I got to be pretty close with those guys, as a junior in high school. And so, I looked up to them. I came to all the games. It was exciting to be a part of that, that college experience, because I was being recruited, because I got to meet all those guys. Larry Shannon was another one. And so, yeah, those guys, I looked up to all of them, and just kind of latched onto the East Carolina spirit, before I decided to come here.
Sure. So your first year was that 95? We played
95.
Stanford?
Yeah, that was the Stanford Liberty Bowl.
Right. Now that was the years that you were there certainly was a great run, and not just a great run, but the quality of people on the football team is something, that I will never forget overall. I mean, we had some really good people, and some hard workers. So that was always a special time for me during that time period as well. So looking at ECU through that period, how would you describe the culture?
Wow. I mean, it started with you, Coach. Honestly, there was a head coach, obviously, but everybody knew you weren't getting on the field unless you were doing what you're supposed to be doing in the weight room and in conditioning. And so I learned that as a high school senior coming over there, working out with you. Coach Logan made it abundantly clear that if you weren't doing your lifts, you weren't getting your conditioning in, you weren't stepping foot on the field. And so coming in as a freshman, I wanted to play as a true freshman. And so I was working my butt off, and I thought the culture was great. I thought the older guys were very encouraging. There wasn't a whole lot of envy, a whole lot of jealousy amongst players. The best guys played and everybody knew it. And so you fought to become the best. And that's just the way we kind of were. And, I never even considered joining a fraternity when I came on campus, because they had this thing called foot five ball going around, and the football team was a fraternity, and we had T-shirts, we had our little sayings and everything, and it was a community. We all went out together, we hung out together on the weekends after football. We were at each other's houses, we were playing PlayStation together. Like it was a community of fellas, and we just enjoyed each other's company. I don't remember, guys there, if somebody got into it every now and then, the next day they were buddies again. It felt good. The coaches were a part of it. I don't remember a bad seat on the coaching staff. And so, yeah, it was the culture was great. And it started with you, and, everybody bought into the discipline that you brought the team. And I think that sent us forward. We only had one losing season in the 5 years I was here, and that was 5-6. So it was still a quality year. And so, yeah, it was definitely, we had the ball rolling forward back then.
Well, Steve was very insightful, and I'll never, I can't even express how much I appreciate the fact that, he just gave me the freedom to run my own deal, and he supported everything that I did. And, when you look at the profession now, and you look at the relationships between the strength coach and the head football coach, and of course, my good friend Mickey Marotti at Ohio State. I actually went up to their clinic this year just for something to do, and Mickey's making $900,000 a year as the head strength coach. So the profession has come a long way, and it's so good to see the head coaches now really appreciating what strength coaches do, and having a good relationship that runs both ways. Of course, strength coaches have to have the ultimate respect for the head football coach as well, and carry out the mission as that leader sees fit as well. So, but I think Steve was even a little bit ahead of his time, and giving me a little bit of freedom where I could kind of. I guess you could say capture the respect of the team, myself, but, I wasn't afraid to fight the battles either. I didn't really want anybody to fight my battles for me, so, but yeah, that was a great thing about that culture, and everybody talks about the culture of a team, and, and I said this the other night when we were all on Locker Room for Life, that, the team that I played for in college, and then all the the different people that I coached with, the 7 coaches that I coached with. Whenever a regime changed, of course, the culture was a little bit different. But, I've got to say that back in the 90s, that culture was very special. And I think if East Carolina would continue to recapture that culture and that tradition, we, like I said the other night, I got that number 9 ring, man. And, I'm going to ask you this. What do you think it's going to take for ECU football to get back into the top 20? Looking at this year, for instance, you got Michigan on the schedule. App State knocked them off first game of the season not that long ago. It can happen. But it seems to be that, ECU is going to really have to blow a lot of people out to get into that top 20 looking at the schedule. How do you feel about the schedule this year?
Well, I'll say this. My senior year, the first 4 games, and I won't necessarily remember the order, but the first 4 games were West Virginia, South Carolina, Miami, and Duke. And I remember we had a senior committee, juniors and seniors committee, kind of player captain committee that Coach Logan put together. And he would kind of come to us, and then we would take stuff on the team. So if he wanted something done, if he needed us to do something in the classroom or on the field or in the locker room, he'd come to us and we'd kind of relay that message to the players. And I remember he came to us, the first few days of summer ball or fall ball that year. And he said, listen, we got these 4 non-conference games. And he's like, I feel great about what we can do in conference, but these 4 non-conference games are going to be tough. He said, if we can win 2 out of the 4, then I think we can go on a nice run and have a lot of wins this year. He said, you guys can kind of get that, that conversation going with the team, get people believing in that. We're going to have a special year. And we kind of looked at him, myself, Jeff Carr, Forrest Foster, Sherwin Lacewell, Pernell Griffin. And we was like, Coach, we don't want to win 2. We want to win all 4. And, at the time, Miami was ranked in the top 15 in the country. South Carolina had just gotten Lou Holtz as their head coach. Duke was looking good. They had a new regime there. And so, we West Virginia was good. They had Mark Bolger, the quarterback, and some good players. And I think the thing that sparked it, because that West Virginia game was the first game of the year. Yeah. They came out and made that comment about East Carolina being lightweights. Right. And you went out and got those T-shirts made, and you lit into us like they don't respect you guys. They don't know who you are. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know what you can do. They don't know about 10-300s. Just all this stuff, and the light bulb just came on, and we just rolled through all 4 of those teams. Obviously, everybody knows about the Hurricane Floyd and the big comeback against Miami and NC State, and we beat West Virginia that first game, beat Duke at home. Beat South Carolina in South Carolina after the hurricane. Then we beat Army as well. So we were 5-0. We were ranked top 15 in the country. So I say that to say back then the schedules were crazy. Every year we were playing West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Miami, you name it. And so we had to be giant killers. We were good, but we had to step up and beat those big name schools week in and week out. And I think somewhere along the way, we had to pull that back some because we started to lose to those schools for whatever reason. And so I feel like maybe the administration decided, hey, if we want to get back to winning, get back to filling the seats, we got to play lesser schedules. And I think that's turning around now. We have back-to-back winning seasons, back-to-back bowl berths. I think that, Coach Houston's a great coach, and I think the staff is doing a great job. And so I love seeing Michigan on the schedule. I don't love seeing East Carolina be 36.5-point underdogs in the early lines. But, we have a new quarterback and, lost a lot of people into the draft or to the transfer portal. So we have a lot to prove. But I want to see us continue to schedule the Michigans of the world. And it's going to take beating those types of schools or at least playing really, really well and beating everybody else to get that respect that we deserve. And so we'll see if we continue to make schedules like that. But I think we're starting to turn things around. I think Pirate Nation is excited again after back-to-back bowl berths. So I feel good about it. I'm doing the radio for all the games, and so I'm seeing a better product on the field here these last couple of years.
Yeah, I went to I think 5 games last year. Some people invited me up there, whatever you call those things. I was in a loge, and then I was at where the bar and the food is and so forth. But so that was a little different experience for me.
Oh
And
yeah.
but God, what a great facility now! What a great press box! We had that little trailer up there for so many years, and what a change. So I know there are a lot of people up there really enjoying that, and I guess they're all sold out. I don't really know, but I can see why. Because it's a great place to, I guess, interact with other Pirates and also enjoy the game. So
Yeah, our facilities are coming along, Coach. I mean, they're they're comparable to a lot of other schools. I mean, you're not going to walk on campus at Georgia or LSU and think that East Carolina is comparable, but no. But the schools in our conference and other schools around, they're comparable. The one thing we're missing is the next piece of the puzzle is the indoor facility, right? I went on my recruiting visit at NC State 25 years ago now, and they had an indoor facility then, and here we are all these years later, and we still don't have one. And so, I spoke to Coach Houston recently. They got to raise a little bit more money to make it happen, but the design has been drawn. They're ready to break ground. It's going to take a year to build it whenever the money's raised. And so I can't wait for that, because that will be huge for recruits as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was crying about the indoor facility back in like 1992, I think it was, or 93, when we had a monsoon every day during camp, like every day, all day, rain. And we ended up in some grade school field or junior high field or something. And it was still nothing but puddles. And that really hurt us that year. And then, through the last few years that I coached, if it's on a Tuesday, which is a very important day, and you're out there and you got a lightning warning, you got to get the whole team off the field, sit around, then try to get back out there and resume practice. And that's just really hard to get that tempo back. I mean, it's a very difficult challenge.
Absolutely.
And, we had that challenge for many years, but, when I was at Carolina, Butch Davis, if it was sprinkling out, we were going indoor, because he wanted to make sure everything was right. So, hey, I guess you got different perspectives on that, but that was his perspective. But yeah, I'm really glad to see that. I recently rejoined the Pirate Club, and I'm going to give a little bit of money to that Pirates Unite. And I can't do much, but I'll do what I can. I got 2 lockers over there. I did buy one in football, one in basketball. So, I always been about supporting the program.
Absolutely.
So, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same. So, when we look at all this stuff going on, now we're going to talk a little bit about financial advice. And we talked a lot about that the other night with Jeff Carr, of course. And, I tell you, man, he's very impressive to me as far as how much he's studied this. And I'll tell you, he knows it inside out. But, I don't know much about the NIL. Some of it I don't even know if I understand. But when I first heard about it, I was I'd love to see the players get paid. But, of course, you got a lot of baggage that comes with that, I guess. How does it work? Will you just give me the basics of the NIL?
Absolutely. So name, image, and likeness obviously is what NIL stands for, and it gives companies, boosters, the opportunity to essentially sponsor or pay money for a player to be able to use their name, their image, or their likeness. So whether that's a company using the player to do a commercial, or having, a booster having an event and having the player come and sign a bunch of autographs or sign memorabilia. And I say boosters, obviously they have these collectives that come together and put money together. So it's not a one-off thing. So it's very regulated, but these people have the ability to pay players to do different things, to use their name, image, and likeness. And so there's really no regulation in terms of how much a player can be paid. I've seen it now where, a kid will commit to a university and they'll know before they step on campus that they're going to get $500,000, $1 million, $2 million over their 4-year period in name, image, and likeness money. And so it's really changed the landscape of college football because, just this past year, we lost an offensive lineman in the transfer portal. He left. He was a 3-year starter, going to come back and start for his 4th year. And he went to Illinois, and Illinois, gave him a bag of money to go there. And it's hard to tell the kid, hey, don't leave for a Power 5 school. And oh, by the way, they're going to pay you a bunch of money to do so. And so these schools out there have the ability to make it happen. I was on campus over at the University of Texas in Austin, and the starting running back there that went in the draft this past year, he was driving around campus in a Lamborghini. The local Lamborghini dealership had given him a car to drive around campus. And so, I mean, how do you keep a kid from signing to Texas when he knows that he can do something like that? And so it's kind of the wild, wild west right now. With, the schools with the most money, with the best boosters, with the best alumni, can get any player they want. And you see players leaving really, really good programs. I mean, Alabama has players transferring away, going other places. And, you would never see a kid leave Alabama. And so it's crazy. It's going to be hard to compete. It's going to be hard to stay relevant unless you have a good collective that's putting up the money to take care of these kids. And you hate to say that because it's not the NFL. And I do think the kids should get some money in their pocket, but with no regulation, it's gotten kind of crazy. And the other thing it's done is it's hurt high school kids, right? It used to be, a school would have 25 scholarships, 22 of those would go to high school kids and maybe 3 to junior colleges or something like that. Now, I mean, that's split in half almost. I mean, they're getting 10 or 12 transfer portal kids and maybe another 11 or 12 from high schools. And so you're fighting a battle of people just leaving schools and going different places. Now, the good thing is you can only transfer and not have to sit out one time. So it's not like kids are leaving every year. Yeah. But yeah, NIL has really changed the landscape, and players, you're not supposed to know what you can get in the transfer or where you're going to go in the transfer portal or how much money you're going to get before you go. But there's ways around that. And I feel there's no way you throw your name in the portal without knowing somebody wants you. And so that's what it's heading towards. And it's hard for fans to kind of settle in and get used to a kid being around for 3 or 4 years anymore. It used to be the best of the best would go to the NFL, but now the best of the best are transferring to greener pastures. And so it's gotten a little bit messy.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder how this whole thing remains ethical, and who polices this thing, and then on top of that, how many players feel like they basically deserve more because they see their friend getting X amount or whatever, and then you get this possibly some type of jealousy or maybe some kind of bad feelings within the team as a result of these types of things. I mean, I don't know. That's just something that kind of crosses my mind. I don't know if it happens, and then of course the money is going to trump loyalty in most cases, I would think, because you're going to take care. Yeah, you're going to take care of your family too. I mean, you might come from a family that doesn't have much money at all.
That's right.
Talked to where I had Leonard on a podcast, and we talked about the hurricane, the flood, and his car floated away, and it was the family car. It was the only car they had. Yeah. So yeah. I can understand it, but definitely challenging.
Yeah, and some aspects I can see where it might put pressure on coaches. At Alabama, there was no secret that the quarterback there was making about $2 million in NIL money. Well, what if he goes out and has 3 or 4 bad games in a row? Now he didn't. He ended up being the number 1 overall draft pick in the draft of the Panthers. But what if he did? What if he went out and had 3 or 4 bad games in a row, threw a bunch of interceptions? Now Nick Saban's standing over there like, well, I can't bench the kid. He's making $2 million. Everybody wants to see him play. And so you start to get that pressure on the coaches when guys are making that kind of money. They're making as much as the coaches in some instances.
Yeah, and then you wonder, well, hey, coach, I'm making a couple million. I don't want to risk injury. I'm not going to do those power cleans today. That's not on my agenda.
You might have got arrested. You might have grabbed the kid.
I'm just going to go up to maybe 250 on squad today. I don't want to. I want to take any chances. So yeah, I can see that a little bit. But hey, maybe that's a reason I'm glad that I play more golf than coach right now. So, hey, what are you going to do? So, I would, this is going to maybe sound a little bit crazy, but, I've seen what you're doing. When we came to play ECU, and I was down on the field before the game that first time we came back, and I ran into you on the field, and we started to talk, and I was actually sick to my stomach. I mean, I wanted to just throw up. I really did, because it just felt so strange. Like, it was making me sick. But, of course, like I mentioned the other night, I think, we played ECU 5 times when I was there, but came back ECU, played Carolina 5 times. I felt terrible every game, whether we won or lost, but that was that deal. But speaking of you, and always thinking that you had a whole lot going on between the years, of course, and it had a real high level of maturity. And then, it did not surprise me that you were on the radio, and I think you've done a fantastic job. And you may have been commentating for all 10 of those games that I coached in. I don't know. You probably did.
I was. I've been on. Well, yeah. I've been on air since 2003. So there might have been 1 or 2 before me, but yeah, I've been on air since 2003.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that first one up at Carolina, I mean, that was a crazy game, but in any event, I think that you would be a candidate for running for some office. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but you're very knowledgeable about the economy, and you seem to be very perceptive about a lot of things, and you speak well. And I think, you have an impressive presence. So can you tell me a little bit about what your political platform would be, or do you not want to reveal that?
Listen, I probably have a lot of things that I'd like to get done, but I just I couldn't deal with the other side, right? Because I seem to think that some things just make sense. Some things in society just seem like they should make sense, and for the other side to feel so strongly against that, I think I would go insane. But Brian Johnson was my roommate in college for a few years, and you'll remember Brian from Washington D.C. and he was a linebacker, big old guy.
I remember Brian very, very well.
And so Brian would, he being from out of town, he didn't know a whole lot of people here. He spent a lot of time, at my house in Greenville with my parents, and he kind of be in the car with me. He didn't have a car, so we'd ride around together everywhere, and he'd see all the people I knew around the city. And so he started calling me the mayor. He said I was the mayor of Greenville. And so that kind of caught on in the locker room. People would call me mayor since I was one of the few people from Greenville. And so it's funny you say that, because I get that from players from time to time calling me mayor, going way back when. I've never had any aspirations to be in politics, but I've definitely heard it a few times.
Well, can you just give me your perspective on the defense budget, for instance?
No, I'm not going to get into it.
Well, see, here's with me. Like, I grew up in Western PA. Both my grandfathers were coal miners. My whole family's nothing but blue collar. I worked in the steel mill growing up in the summertime.
Wow.
My mother was a secretary at the steel mill, and she'd get me a job and help my friends get jobs there. And man, we just worked for hourly wages, and all my relatives, both my grandfathers, they started in the coal mine when they were 12 years old.
Mm.
My maternal grandfather worked in there 55 years, my paternal 45 years. He was a boss in the mine, but all of us were Democrats.
Yeah.
And we didn't like people that had money. We none of us had money. We always had to struggle and work really hard, or work 2 jobs or whatever. And we just saw people with a whole lot of money. It's like, that ain't us, man. We don't even get that. But and their whole agenda is different from ours. But My perspective has changed some over the years just based on the fact that I support things that have a foundation in the Word of God. And I'm going to continue to do that. And I don't know which party is going to be, all these different issues, but I'm just going to quit right there, where that's concerned, and just say that that's what I'm going to support, is what I feel is in the Word. And I don't think you can go wrong if you have that perspective. But there's a whole lot of things out there to consider, no question about it.
Right.
But I do believe that you would make a great politician. I don't know what office it would be, but I'm talking about maybe state senator. I don't know. But I would certainly support you.
Well,
I don't have much
appreciate
money
that.
though, but
if I'm looking to raise some money and go into politics, I'll surely give you a call.
I wouldn't be the guy, but I could certainly speak to your background and those 4 things that I love, and that's accountability, work ethic, discipline, and spirit. You had them all, brother. You had them all, and you still got them all.
I appreciate that.
Well, I don't know how much time we got left, but let's talk about Jeff Charles. Of course, when I came to East Carolina, him and the big guy, they'd come in the weight room every day.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, I think he did bench press 6 days a week. He loved to do bench press. And then him and big guy would go run. I don't know what, big guy would run big guy could run forever.
Right.
But, Jeff was always very much into lifting. He was more upper body, of course. I'd always get on those guys about never doing squats. I'd always tell them they both look like Mr. Potato Head. But, but can't say enough about Jeff. I mean, I'm happy that I was able to have, get to know him that first 10 years that I was there. And, and he really never changed. I mean, he was so much a part of and so much committed to the program, and had so much of a uniqueness in the way that he announced the game. And there you were right there beside him. So I know that, and I'm sure you've been interviewed about this before, but you just say a few words about that.
Yeah. Wow. Jeff meant a lot to me. He really did. I was 2003 was my first year on the broadcast. So Jeff and I just completed our 20th season this past season. And it was weird kind of the way it happened. I was out of college. I kind of did a stint with the Carolina Panthers. That was kind of over with. I was working in finance, and the company that I worked for there in Greenville was doing an advertisement during the pregame show. Yeah. And it was called, such and such bank, keys to the game. And so my boss at the time reached out to the radio station and said, hey, since we have a former player here working for us, can he actually go on the pregame show and do the keys to the game? And so they said that'd be a great idea. And so I would go down to whatever restaurant we were at, doing the pregame show. And I started bringing my keys to the game, and I would do all this research, and I'd have these great keys, and I sound like I knew what I was talking about. And so they loved it, and they asked me to stay on the pregame show, not to just do the keys, but to do the whole pregame show. And so that was the 2002 season. And so I really enjoyed it, had a great time, enjoyed the radio. And I was a business management major. I didn't have any experience in radio or television, but I just took to it as a natural. Yeah. And people kept saying what a great job I was doing. And so right at that time, some things were happening differently with the broadcast, and Marty Feuer was going to come from off the sideline and go into the booth and be kind of the booth host. And so they needed a sideline guy. And so Jeff reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to do sideline? And I was like, absolutely. To be able to go to all the games and stay close to the team, I would love that. And so that's kind of where it started. And Jeff would just say, I'll throw it to you. You just kind of give, a scene setter, let us know what's going on down the field, and you can throw it back up to me. It's not that hard. He would coach me up the night before games to let me know what injuries there might be, what was going on the other team, anything I might need to know. And I would just kind of, research both teams' depth charts so I would know the players in case there was an injury or something I need to talk to the broadcast about. And that first season on the sidelines, it went pretty well. And Jeff had nothing but great things to say. Did 2 more seasons on the sideline, and then right about that time, Carl Crumpler Sr. retired, and he stepped aside. And Jeff asked me to come in the booth and be the color commentator. And so that was obviously nerve-wracking because I had to sit right next to Jeff, and he was already a legend at that point. And I just didn't want to step on his toes. I didn't want to talk over him. I didn't want to mess up. And so he just kept encouraging me and said, hey, people respect what you have to say. You're a former player. You did a great job playing. Now you're doing a great job on the radio. They want to hear what you have to say. And so he instilled that confidence in me. And, I remember my dad used to say, hey, don't get in there messing around with Jeff. You let Jeff talk. When it's your turn to talk, you can talk, but don't be in there stepping on Jeff. And so I was always worried about doing that. And I was like, Dad, I thought this was supposed to be kind of like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Like I'm the talent also, so I should be able to talk as much as I want to. He's like, no. This is Jeff's show. You just go in and don't screw it up. And so that's kind of how things started off. But man, he just, the night before every game, we'd go have dinner, and he just tell me all I need to know. And I just learned so much from him about the business. And the fact that he didn't go to East Carolina was a good thing because he wasn't a homer. And, he would just call it like he saw it. So you could listen to the game, whether you went to State or whether you went to East Carolina, if they were playing each other, you could enjoy our broadcast because nobody was like, oh, what's going on? Oh, what's the coach doing? Oh, you didn't get that feeling. We just called the game as it was. We said what was going on the field, and we said it from our heart. And so that was just kind of the way I learned from him. That's the way we've always done it. And to have, this happen to him, it's so abruptly, I got the call, obviously like maybe 30, 45 minutes after it happened. He was on a basketball trip, so I wasn't there, but it was a crushing blow. He was like a father figure to me. Just the salt of the earth kind of guy. And regardless of our age difference, he always treated me as an equal. And it's going to be different being in the booth with someone else this year. I can promise you that.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, when Jeff was going through the colon issue that he had, he got into this intravenous mistletoe, and basically, I had a melanoma, and I had surgery, and he had been out at Durango at Namaste for a couple weeks. I think he might have been there for a month. So I went out to Namaste after I had my surgery, and of course I was cleared and everything, but I wanted to make sure. So I was trying to boost my immune system. So I went out there and did the intravenous mistletoe for about 10 days, along with some other stuff. But, he turned me on to that. And he was a really big believer in it. And, I'll always be thankful toward him for that as well, as being a great friend. Jeff was always a great friend to everybody, he was always very respectful to everybody. So,
absolutely.
So I definitely wanted to mention him. I'm just going to get into this briefly. The reason that I started armoredlife.org, my website, Absolute Empowerment, these guys asked me if I wanted to do a podcast, and I said I'd do it if I could talk about Jesus Christ and if I could kind of get my mission across. And so, I'm going to talk about this. I guess I'm going to be on Pirate Radio with Marcus tomorrow, which would be the first time in about 4 or 5 years I've been on there. But, 2 things first. The 2 guys that I coached that were slaughtered. One young man from Carolina, of course, shot in the chest 3 times when he went home. Another young man from ECU shot in some parking lot in Raleigh 12 or 15 times. And then over 100 guys that I coached that went by the wayside for repeatedly testing positive for drugs. Then when you look at the guys that were 25 guys come in recruited, and by the time they're seniors, there's maybe 5 or 6 guys left somehow. And I just started thinking to myself that, instead of going down to the beach and going fishing, playing golf every day or something, is there anything I can do maybe to contribute to saving a few people. I don't know. But I do know this. If you develop a strong spiritual commitment and you get in that word and you got the right people around you and the right influences, that you're going to live better and you're going to make better decisions and you're going to make better choices. And those choices are going to possibly save your career, possibly save you from a bad decision. And I think that the earlier we get with younger people with those types of things, the better. And I think there's a real need for it still, even though in programs now you have, like Chuck Young, of course, you have a pastor. You've got people who chase these guys around and make sure they're going to class and so forth. But at the same time, I just don't think they can hear it enough.
That's right.
And I'm going to do whatever I can. I really don't know where this is going, but I'm just going to keep having podcasts and try to bring some young folks to the podcast, because we've had some unbelievable people on the podcast now. And I just let God lead me every week to, who's next. We had Stephen Brady on, and Stephen was fighting colon cancer. We brought him on, and Pastor Gene, who comes on, he prayed for Stephen. And Addison Bass, another former Pirate from way back, heard the podcast and came on the next week and wanted to rededicate his life to Christ right on the podcast.
Wow.
So these are the type of things we want to do. And, when I look at Pernell Griffin and Brian Moss and Leonard Henry, those guys are incredible. I mean, when I talk to those guys, I learn something every time I talk to them. And, they're like directly connected to God. So I'm very thankful to have coached those guys, and now they're very influential pastors in the world. So I'm excited about it. I get so excited when I see guys like that doing so well and doing something so meaningful in the world. I'm excited about Kevin Monroe and what he's doing in the world. Can't wait to vote for you when you run for that House of Representatives. So, all right, give me a quick rundown on your kids, man. Let's hear it.
So yeah, I've got two boys. My oldest is 16. He'll be a rising junior. We live in kind of the Cary Apex area here in North Carolina, and so he goes to Green Level High School. School's about 5 or 6 years old, so they've struggled as a program, as a football program. I think they've won 2 games the last 3 seasons in a row, and so the coach resigned, and so now they're under a new regime. And he's excited about this season. He plays receiver. He's a good player, got good hands, and so we're looking forward to a good year from him. He also plays baseball, good baseball player. And then I have my youngest. My youngest is 12. He'll be a rising 7th grader. He's in middle school, and it's the same deal: football, basketball, baseball. He loves football. Wants to play college football one day. They're both growing like weeds. My oldest, he entered high school at about 5'6" in 9th grade, and now he's finishing his 10th grade year. He's about 6'2.5". So about 7 inches of growth over the last 2 years. He's just gangly and long and trying to grow into that body. And so, I'm leaning on you, Coach, to help train him up, get him ready to go. Because he's
like a newborn colt.
That's exactly right. When Coach Houston saw him at camp last year, he called him a baby deer. That's about what he is. Just trying to figure that body out. So, the both of them. Matter of fact, I'm at a football workout right now for my youngest. So they love sports. They're doing well in school. I appreciate you asking about them.
Well, you and I talked, and like I said, I'm up in Cary about 3 or 4 days a week. I've got a little deal up there that I do, and we're going to get together, and hopefully I can contribute a little bit, and I'm really happy to do it. So I'll be fired up about that.
Absolutely. He needs to learn from the person that taught me. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate that. Well, I certainly appreciate you being on the show, and I'm looking forward to sitting down with Marcus tomorrow, getting into that a little bit. And I'm very proud of him as well, and basically his commitment to Jesus Christ, and the way that he is attempting to influence a lot of people. And he had his own podcast for a while. He bounced around doing a lot of different things. I know he was coaching at Livingstone, but now he's helping out with Pirate Radio, which is great. But I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Go ahead. Do you have something else you wanted to say?
No, I just, we spoke a little bit about my wife when she was, in high school. Yeah. And obviously we've been married now 22 years. And she's my rock. And she's, a physician over at Wake Med Hospital here locally. And she has been kind of the pushed me to be the spiritual leader of our family. So she's made me a better Christian. She lost both of her parents in the span of a couple of years when they were in their 60s. And so, life just makes so many different turns. And so to have that spiritual background, to know that God's got your back, it's the only thing that carries you through. So I'm so glad for you to have this platform, for us to come on and openly talk about God and openly talk about how he's affected our lives. My brother just got baptized just a few years ago in his 40s. So, he's still working. He's still working on everybody's life. And I really like the opportunity to come on and talk about it. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. All right, we're going to go ahead and sign off. This is Jeff Connors signing off for Absolute Empowerment. God bless, and we'll see you next week with another excellent guest. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors on The Sports Objective. Join us every Monday night for a new edition of the show. Listen to the show pretty much everywhere podcasts are found. Be sure to follow us on social media at The Sports OBJ on Twitter and TikTok, at The Sports Objective on Instagram. Like and follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, we appreciate you listening to the show. And go Pirates!